Okay, so we're going to get started. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
My name is Tammy Goodwater, and I know some of you, not all of you yet, but I am the Pre-K2 specialist for the Utah State Board of Education. This on the end is Melissa. She's our new HQSR-E auditor, so you'll be working with her pretty closely too. And then my counterpart at DWS is Florencia Shapira, and she handles all the private providers, but she and I kind of collaborate because, as you know, Melissa Bo went upstairs to special ed, and so I'm managing HQSR-E in addition to HQSR now, and I'm still kind of figuring this all out because, as you know, it's a little complicated. So thank you for being here today. I just kind of like to know where you're coming from. So Angela, can we start with you?
Yeah, so I'm Angela Doan. I'm coming from Salt Lake City, Mayor Biskupski's office. I'm a senior advisor for education.
Awesome. Thanks for being here. Hi.
I'm Katie Condaco. I'm with Murray.
And I'm Debbie Evans, also from Murray.
Can I just say, Debbie, how much I've talked about your program to other people just
you.
yesterday, because I don't know if you know that Debbie's from Murray. I went with Melissa to see her program, and it's in a converted firehouse, and she used community block grant funds to do that. And so I've been talking to a lot of people about that. So neat. So. Good. That was actually one of the people I talked to was Lorene about your program. Yay. Okay. Hi. Oh, they're just back there. We'll go get to them. Yeah.
Nedra Saunders with Davis School District.
Welcome.
Christine Jones with Davis.
Thank you.
Amy Garland with Davis.
Uh-huh. Good to see you.
Tara Boswell with Wasatch.
Yep.
Audrey Powell with Salt Lake District.
Okay, welcome.
Joan King, Salt Lake District.
With Davis Salt Lake District.
Okay, and in the back, Melissa.
Melissa Bowen, Special Education with Harvard.
Yep.
And Liz Williams, Kindergarten Special Education.
Yeah. And then there are some people who are listening online, and I did say I sent all of you the link to the live stream so you could, and it's because it is being recorded, so you can access it later today. And then the slides should be up hopefully later today, as well as all of the grant application information. I sent it to him yesterday, so hopefully it will be. I asked them to put it up at 9, but I'm not sure if it's up. I haven't checked. So thank you all for being here today. So let's get into this. I don't think we're going to be here quite the 3 hours. I don't think it's going to take that long, but we wanted to make sure we had enough time so we weren't rushing at the end. So just some background on HQSR-E. Is anybody not familiar with what HQSR-E is? I know, Angela, you're not. So let me just go through that really quickly. So this is the Utah School Readiness Expansion Initiative. It was signed by Governor Herbert on March 28th, 2016, and we put a link in the slides to that actual bill. It's Senate Bill 101. It expands access to high-quality school readiness for economically disadvantaged students. So basically, it's a grant to expand your enrollment of economically disadvantaged students. It provides TANF funds for LEAs. TANF is Temporary Assistance for Needy Families. And the components, it includes all the components of a high-quality school readiness program. And there is an independent evaluation of performance outcomes that's done by ETI, which is the Educational Testing Institute. They're not going to be here today, but they may, they're not going to be here today. Now, I think if she wanted you to know anything, she would have sent me some slides. So. The purpose of this grant is to provide grant funds to local education agencies, or LEAs, with existing early education programs deemed high quality. Private providers can also access this grant, but they access that through DWS, and it's a separate application process. So the grant is intended to increase school readiness, to improve academic performance, and to reduce remediation costs associated with lower performance. Anybody can apply, or the programs that are eligible to apply provide services to economically disadvantaged 4-year-old children. You need to illustrate how the funds will be used to expand your current preschool program, because the grant pays for new economically disadvantaged students, not existing ones, unless they were 3-year-olds in your 3-year-old program and they're now moving to your 4-year-old program. You also have to be deemed high quality as determined by the ECHRS 3. And some additional rubric criteria. So I do have a couple of the ECHRS books if anybody's not familiar and wants to look at it. These aren't to take with you. There were standards books at the back. You're free to take those. They're in English and in Spanish. But these I need just because we have limited copies. Okay, any questions so far? Okay, good. Child eligibility. Eligibility criteria for children attending TANF preschool programs is the age of the preschool pupil. They have to have attained at least their fourth birthday by at least their fourth birthday on or before September 2nd of the year in that they're enrolled. They must also meet the following criteria for TANF eligibility. An economically disadvantaged student means that the student has qualified or will qualify for free lunch, reduced price lunch, and these are under the National School Lunch Program guidelines, or if their parents' income meets 200% of poverty. And that validation of eligibility will be required. And I put a sample of that. Most of you have seen it. That's in your packet. I did put a note over it because the income guidelines will be changed in January. But I wanted you to see also I circled, although there was a lot of confusion this year about if they should circle their household size, if they should circle their income eligibility. So we just put some directions in it to clarify. So we want you to circle the household size and the income so that it's clear to us. And Melissa, correct me if I'm wrong, but sometimes those are in different categories. So you might have a family of 4, but they might qualify with an income that's on a 2. But
No, it should go straight across.
okay, so they should circle straight across because I've seen some that kind of
Yeah.
circle here, but they go up here.
Straight across.
Okay.
And that amount, is that amount working or is that less than that amount?
Okay. So even if they are a family of 4 and their monthly income is $1,800, they still need to circle across. Okay. Good. Thank you for clarifying. Debbie.
One of the things that I do that helps them out is that I ask them while they're with me, how many people are in your family, and then I highlight what I want them to highlight one of these things.
Okay.
So if there's 5 people, I highlight the monthly income, family income right across.
Okay.
That seems to help them.
Thank you very much. So for those of you that are listening online, Debbie said that one of the things she finds helpful when she's doing the eligibility documentation is she asks them what their household size is and then highlights across so they know where to circle. Okay. So curriculum. Your curriculum, you have to utilize an evidence-based curriculum that includes the developmental domains and academic content areas that are defined in the Utah Early Childhood Standards that are adopted by the State Board of Education. That is that book that's back there. Those are currently being revised, but we're still obviously using those right now, but I just wanted to let you know that is in the works. Programs also must incorporate intentional and differentiated instruction, which means, you're not just, intentional is you're not just throwing out coloring sheets and, okay, everybody have a good time. You're really thinking about what do you want your students to learn. Differentiated means that you're looking at what each individual child needs and kind of meeting their needs at their level. This can happen whole group, small group, or as a child-directed learning opportunity, meaning what you have out for them to play with or to use is something that they're choosing to do, but they're benefiting from the learning of that experience. The academic content areas are oral language, listening comprehension, phonological awareness, which is not necessarily the letter sounds, but when the letter sounds within a word, and then pre-reading strategies, alphabet and word knowledge, writing, book knowledge and print awareness, numeracy and math, creative arts, science and technology, and I put an asterisk there. We'll go back to that. Some of you probably already know how it's related to ECHRS 3, why I put an asterisk there. Social studies, health and safety, and PE. We require ongoing assessment of students' educational growth and developmental progress to inform instruction. Pre and post assessment of each student. This is where ETI comes in, and we do ask for parental consent. Whoops, looks like I have a little bit of a typo there. Parental consent from the parent for the independent evaluator. Ongoing program evaluation and data collecting to monitor program goal achievement and implementation of required components. So we will come out and look to make sure that you have all the signed forms that you need, and that your program is implementing those components, and and that's by using the ECHRS that we determine that. For students and families, we do encourage family engagement, which is ongoing communication between home and school, and parent education opportunities based on the family circumstances. So what do the families in your population need? Providing a class size that does not exceed 20 students, and that would be 1 adult for every 10 students in the class. Each teacher must have at least obtained the minimum standards of a child development associate certification, or an associate or bachelor's degree in an early childhood education related field. Also providing ongoing, focused, and intensive professional development for staff. And your preschool program may use funds for allowable activities. So in the IGP scholarship application, at the very back, it has some appropriate uses for TANF funds if you're interested in looking in that. Monitoring of program requirements. It's important that you have frequent contact with the TANF preschool administrator to ensure contract components are being met, and I believe that's Christine Main. Is that right, Florencia? She's our TANF administrator. And is that also you, Melissa? Okay. So can you explain to me how that works? Because I send information to you, and I also send information to Christine.
Sorry.
Sorry.
Let's see if this works. DWS is in charge of the Intergenerational Poverty Scholarship Program, so that's what you will be sending to DWS.
Okay.
So you will only send the information of those children that come to you with a voucher. And
Okay.
I will go over that later on.
Okay, thank you. Changes to the grant and the budget after approved in writing by USB have to be reported to the TANF preschool administrator, so Melissa, within 10 days, including budget, enrollment, and staffing. Any questions so far? Okay. Confidentiality is important in relation to the grant. You should be maintaining confidentiality of all your records, including, but not limited to, the billings, any USB-E records, participant records, and this is in accordance with federal and state laws, regulations, and directives relating to confidentiality. You need to inform all of your LEA officers, employees, and agents providing services of the confidentiality provisions, and you're responsible for the consequences of any breach of confidentiality. And one of the questions that came up when I was out doing the fall monitoring this year is who should be signing those, the code of conduct and the disclosure for your staff. Anybody that's providing support services to your students, if it's, I was up in Duchesne and they had a PE specialist that worked with their students for 15 minutes every week. So that person's going to need to sign. If you have a speech therapist that's working with your students, anybody that comes in contact, the only person that we've kind of decided is okay not to sign is substitutes. If you have TAs or teacher substitutes that are coming in, it's okay for them not to sign that code of conduct or disclosure. This all comes under the FERPA, the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act. This is a federal law that protects the privacy of student education records. It allows for the disclosure of personally identifiable information from education records without consent for education-related purposes only. So I have an example there for you that you can read if you want more information about that. It also provides that the personally identifiable information from education records cannot be published in a way that would allow individual students, their parents, to be identified. There are penalties for failure to perform. The failure to meet the performance standards are applied as follows. The preschool's performance is reviewed against the performance standards in Section 4 of the performance standards on a time frame outlined by the TANF preschool administrator and the State Board of Education. That's in the application. Failure to meet a standard may require the preschool to develop a corrective action plan and successfully implement the corrective action plan or face termination of the grant. Grant performance shall be measured by the following performance standards. Verification, so the ability to immediately produce documentation which verifies eligibility of enrolled children and the number of children served, and all the performance information that's reported to USB and the TANF preschool administrator. Accomplishing all of the reporting and documentation deadlines and requirements as provided for in the grant, and adherence to the established schedule for the delivery of designated services as approved by the USB. So here's the application process. December 15th is when the letter of intent to apply for HQSR-E is due. This is how we determine who we're going to be coming out to observe. So based on those letters of intent, the LEAs are contacted to schedule the ECHRS observation, and we go to a randomly selected program in your district. You're notified afterwards if your ECHRS score indicates evidence of high quality, and an overall score of 3 or higher on the ECHRS 3, which is this yellow book, and components of the HQSR-E is needed to submit an application. So once you have that high quality designation, then you are able to apply. I don't think, is there a letter of intent, Melissa, or do you just write it yourself? Yeah. Yeah, an email? Hi.
Is that for, application for like year 3 as well?
Yes, right?
No, I can't remember if we had, I don't do that last year, did we?
I can't remember.
Yeah, okay, I guess we need a letter of intent, she needs to for her grant, so, yeah, so just by December, and then it helps with the
Okay.
ECHRs. Knows when to schedule that ECHRs authorization.
So for people listening online, I just want to clarify, if you're wanting to submit a letter of intent, an email is sufficient, is that correct?
And who does the email go to?
It would go to the there's it's in the grant.
On top of the
Yeah.
application,
Yeah, HQSR-E .utah.gov, yeah. So that's for new and renewing applicants. After that, an interview will also be, during that observation, an interview will be conducted and scored on a rubric. You need to be prepared to show evidence of the high quality elements. USBE will notify applicants of non-approval or conditional approval. So, of course, you'll obviously be notified if you're approved, but also if you won't be approved or if we require some additional things before you can be approved. So those would be recommendations of changes that need to be completed. February 16th is the due date this year for submitting applications to be reviewed by the committee. And those are emailed. The grant application, as I said, should be online today. And it's a fillable PDF. And hopefully that works okay, because this is the first time I've ever made one of those. It's kind of an interesting experience. Application instructions, please make sure you're completing all the forms accurately. The document is used to evaluate compliance with legislation and TANF preschool requirements. We recommend or ask for the following grant application format, using only the spaces provided for responses, single-spaced, and with, is this called Calibri or Calibri? Does anybody know? Calibri? 11-point font. Any changes in the grant format will result in elimination of your LEA from grant consideration. All data should be based on local need and not national statistics or studies. And the data generated internally must meet the requirements for compliance with research-based data-driven design. Reports can be attached, or grant readers may request additional data or reports to verify information. Word copy, it's supposed to be a Word copy. And if you're having trouble with the PDF, I'm happy to send you one. When I sent the application to IT earlier this week, they asked for a PDF copy. So I can provide you with one. There will be a PDF online, but it is on the website, and you type information into the text boxes. The text boxes stay the same size. It says on accept on B9. Obviously, with a fillable PDF, it's not going to expand. But that portion of the application conducts ongoing program evaluation and data collection. So if you're finding that you need more room, I can send you that Word document. There's a note at the bottom of the table that indicates that it can be extended as needed, which that's not applicable now, except in the Word document. Assurances provide, making sure that you agree to the services that you provide the services that you agree to in the grant contract. So you'll be having one of your district administrators sign, yes, we know what we have to do, yes, we're going to do it. TANF preschool responsibilities, high quality preschool services consistent with the needs of the local community, including partnerships with other early childhood providers to enhance program services and avoid duplication. Demonstrating how services provided by the preschool are based on the needs of qualifying children. The intent of the TANF preschool grant is to provide local communities with high quality preschool programs for underserved children and who are also at high risk for school failure due to poverty. Applicants, or I should say associated with poverty, that not due to. Applicants must demonstrate how they will serve additional new children who are TANF eligible and not children already attending the program. Any questions so far? Just want to make sure. So for recruitment, this is part of the expansion. We want to know how you have determined that there's a need for the services that you're proposing. We'd like you to describe local data that was used to determine the population you'll serve and the needs of the families. Grant readers may contact programs for additional information to verify data. What policies and procedures will be used to admit eligible students to the preschool program, and how will you recruit eligible children who are not currently receiving preschool services? Those are questions we want you to answer. Funding, The grant must supplement other sources of funding, not replace it. So describing what fees the student's parent or legal guardian will pay, how will other funding sources be used to increase access to the program. Those could be federal, private grants or donations, or existing or planned partnerships, or home-based technology provider, and how those funds will be used to expand the number of eligible students served, target the highest risk students, including children at risk of experiencing intergenerational poverty, and support an inclusive program. So this is what the budget detail and narrative looks like. I think I included a copy in there for you, just so you can see it. On the budget form, you're going to itemize, detail, and describe on each line item for each year of grant funding requested. So there's the budget detail form and the narrative. And for details on allowable uses of TANF funds, there's a link to that on the DWS website. In submitting an application, programs agree to the stipulations below. The Utah State Board of Education reserves the right to reject any application received if it's determined that the proposal does not meet the specifications outlined in the application, or if funds should be limited for any reason. We are the final approving authority for all reports and products occurring as integral parts of any funding agreement resulting from the application. Funding for purchase, construction, or permanent improvement of any building or facility is not authorized. All documents, reports, and any materials associated of any kind from the application become the property of USBE, and the application must include a signed cover page with the original application. The Utah State Board of Education will evaluate each proposal received. Selection will be made by the end of April 2018. Selection of awards will be made by the Utah State Board of Education based on high quality status and performance on the grant application rubric. An award's not final unless approvals are given at each level, and no funds may be expended prior to final approval. So this is just a copy of the application rubric. It's also included in your packet. If you receive a conditional approval, if we recommend that, a letter is sent to the applicant. There's a list of conditions that have to be met for application approval. The amendments must contain recommended changes or explanations of how those conditions will be met. And then after it's reviewed and the application is approved and all the amendments, if monies are available, then the applicant may be approved for funding.
So this slide is just
Go ahead.
in regards to like your ECHR score, does it come up to where it needs to be? We want people to be accessing funding, and so if there is some things that we think you could improve by starting for next year, we would just go through this process.
What is the ECHR score for reapplication?
3 or higher.
Really? It's staying the same, it doesn't increase?
No, not this time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We're seeing how ECHRs impact student outcomes, which will come with the key a little bit. We'll be able to
Yes.
analyze that.
Mm-hmm. So for those listening online, a question was asked, what score you need to, if you're a renewal applicant, what score you need to receive in order to reapply, and that's a 3 or higher. The Utah State Board of Education retains the right to negotiate reasonable adjustments with programs or reject any and all applications. Successful award will meet the intent of the funding and be the most advantageous to the goals of the legislation. The USBE may consider suggested modifications to the application received at any time before the award is made, if such modifications meet the intent of the funding are in the best interest of the state of Utah. The successful applicant will demonstrate the ability to document, coordinate, and integrate project activities with direct project costs and expected outcomes that best meet with the intent of the funding. And cancellation of grants. The Department of Ed reserves the right to terminate any contract if the recipient demonstrates fiscal irresponsibility, fails to perform in accordance with the conditions of the application or grant, fails to perform in accordance with the application or any negotiated modifications, or if the terms and conditions under which the application was approved change and the applicant can no longer fulfill the needs, objectives, or population to be served. Also, equal and fair consideration of all populations regardless of race, gender, color, national origin, religion, age, or disability. That also includes the selection of personnel, advisory, or steering committee members, and in any other activities operated as part of the project. This is a performance-based contract. Payments to programs are reimbursed through USBE and based on an actual TANF-related expenditures paid by the preschool. The contract is performance-based and that penalties will be assessed for failure to meet specific performance standards. So the contract effective date begins July 1st, 2018, and it continues through July 30th, 2019. That's contingent upon funding and performance with the option of a third-year renewal, but there is not going to be, this is the final year, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
So all funds and everything needs to be submitted by July 15th. This last year we let you go until July 30th, but for this third year, DWS is saying this is the deadline. So that helps just to aware of salaries. If you're including salaries in that third year, you need to figure out a way, if your closeout isn't till the end of July, how to get that submitted.
You said July 15th?
I think it's July 15th.
Okay. So if you're listening online, because this is the final year of the grant,
But we'll double check on that for you.
all of your expenditures need to be submitted by July 15th, 2018.
We'll get that date from DWS.
I mean, 2019, okay.
Yeah, we'll get the date from them. So
Okay.
that'll just impact those who have salaries on the grant.
So if you're listening online, make sure that you consider your salaries when you're considering your expenditures and that deadline. Reimbursement procedures. So this is where Melissa comes in, was going to be your best friend. Reimbursement requests and backup documentation are submitted through the Utah Consolidated Application System, the UCA. Is anybody not familiar with that? Okay, I'm not. I just got access this week. Yeah, I haven't even had a chance to get on yet, but yeah, that's where you submit it through. The requests are reviewed, and then they're reviewed by us prior to submitting to DWS for reimbursement. And DWS requires 100% documentation for all transactions. So we must receive and review reimbursement requests and documentation prior to authorizing payments. Melissa, do you want to talk about any of this? Okay. All right. Okay. So I'll get through. I think you ended up with 3 slides. So when I'm done, I'll see if anybody has any questions for Melissa. Documentation should include the following: a general ledger detail of expenditures, backup documentation for the general ledger detail. I have a question about that. What does that mean? Backup documentation. Do you know?
What's the general ledger detail?
Yeah.
It's something generated by the system. So the general ledger detail is generated by whatever system the district uses, and will support basically the numbers that are going to be on the reimbursement.
Okay.
So just how the totals were calculated.
Okay. Invoices or receipts. Okay. Thank you for the clarification. If your LEA is elected to track IGP scholarship expansion expenditures separately from HQSR-E expansion expenditures, you need to include a statement indicating that. If you're using the same account to track the expansion expenditures for HQSR-E and the IGP scholarship, your total expenditures must be equal to or less than total revenue for both. For the IGP scholarships, which Florencia is going to address at the end, your LEA is required to calculate a cost per student to submit to DWS. And to determine that cost, a copy of the adopted preschool tuition schedule can be used to calculate the IGP scholarship. If your LEA does not have an adopted preschool tuition schedule, an analysis must be developed which captures the cost per student to run a preschool program for a year. Yeah, please do.
All right. When you determine your cost per month per student, sometimes the tuition is not what will cover that cost. So I know I have worked with some of you this past year, and Melissa helped you and determine the actual cost. So if you have a sliding scale in your program, most likely those costs are not going to be covering what it costs for that child to be in the program. So if you use the maximum amount a family could be paying, you might need to add some other costs to that. So consider everything that it takes for that child to be in that position. We don't want to be underpaying you. But remember, everything you add to that has to be supported, has to have your supporting documentation. So it's a good time to start thinking, what does it really cost for that child to be there? So then we don't have to do 2, 3, or 4 amendments to the same contract. So I think some districts have come up with that number right away, and for some others it was a struggle to see. Well, but some other departments are taking up the cost for this or that. So it's a good time to start thinking about it. And if you need help, you can always contact me.
So LEA, I'm trying to combine LGAA and IGP, must ensure that those IGP expenditures are also not being paid for by HQSR-E TANF funds. So we recommend that you record those separately, just to kind of keep those separate so there's no overlap. Attendance reports will be documentation for the number of expansion seats served with a summary of TANF, SPED, regular tuition, and IGP. And we send you you probably are all aware that we send you that quarterly report template. I did revise that. There was some questions this year and some confusion about when I put down my classrooms, am I putting the number of sessions or the number of classes that I have? So I've just included an extra line on that so that you can tell me how many classrooms you're serving, or how many classrooms you have, and then how many sessions you have, so that there's no confusion for you. Does that make sense? Okay. You have to provide an overall enrollment data and records through Move It to show a baseline of students who attended 60 days or more in the year prior to receiving grant funds. Is anybody not familiar with Move It? Okay, I just want to you're not, Tara. So Move It's a program that we use to securely send information back and forth, so we're not sending it through email or the internet. And I believe, I'm not sure how this process works because I don't actually have a Move It account, but I believe that you sign up for one through USB. I will find that out for you. And then you send that information securely to us. To account for expansion seats, your LEA must provide enrollment data and records through Move It because you were using that student personal information that we don't want someone to come in contact with. For students who attended 60 days or more in the current grant year, and you subtract the baseline figure. This number will be used to validate the reasonableness of expenditures claimed against TANF funds. Oh, here we go. It's in the slides, Tara. Questions regarding Move It, then you're going to contact Kristen Campbell, and her email's at the bottom. Okay. I don't know if you know, but Kristen Campbell also is in charge of all of our SSID numbers. And she was supposed to send information to Emma, who's our government office person. And I was hoping she was going to come today, but I don't think she could. But if you have any questions about SSIDs, student ID numbers, she's the person to ask. She's in charge of putting them all in. So I'm going to just talk about ECHRS real quick, if anybody's not familiar with it. This is the Early Childhood Environment Rating Scale. This is the 3rd edition. This is the one that we use. It's got a comprehensive definition of quality, its reliance on observation and evidence of access to base assessment of classroom quality. So we have indicators in here that we circle as we observe. There's 35 items and 6 subscales. All of the indicators are a yes or a no, and it's 1 to 7 point item scores. And the total score is calculated and averaged for an overall program score. And I put a link there at the bottom because there's more information there. It's where I got my information from because I wanted to make sure I was accurate. And you can also purchase books through ERSI. They're about $25 each. What does ECHRS evaluate? This is the list of things. So you can see there's a lot of things that we're looking for. It's always frustrating when some of them are multiple items are happening at the same time because I have to write like super fast or circle things really fast. So I try to take as much evidence for you as possible of conversations or things that I'm seeing happening. When I have come in, I've told some of you before that I'm rooting for you. I want you to do well. So I'm looking for evidence of those things that are going right, and unfortunately I'm also looking for the things that aren't quite there yet. I just took a sample page from mine. Mine has a lot of notes in it. There is a supplemental material for the ECHRS if you haven't heard this before. If you go to ESRI and you type in, if you Google ESRI or ECHRS supplemental materials, there is a link to the downloads for the additional information. And it's usually, it's not necessarily for the indicators themselves. They have lots of notes for clarification, and they included a lot more. And then Melissa was really lucky. She got to go to North Carolina last year and do the ECRS training with the authors. And so she had a lot of notes in her book that I just kind of took her book page by page and just copied them over to mine. So I just have lots of little notes written in mine to make sure that I check for these things. So the scale is, if you get a 1, it's inadequate. Then in between 2 and 3, that would be, just, there's no name given to it. It's just there. 3 is minimal, 5 is good, and 7 is excellent. So in just talking about that a little more, and just my experience in going out with Melissa, you may have an area that's weak, and it may be something that's out of your control, like maybe your playground fencing is not very great. I was at a school earlier this fall where the playground that the teacher chose to take the children to had no fence between the parking lot and the playground. That is within her control. Well, I don't know why she chose that, but if that was a playground, the only one that she had accessible, that's kind of out of her control. That's a district problem, not hers. And there may be areas where you may fall short. A lot of people worry about that they don't get that 1 hour of free play time. So where you are not meeting, you may make up in other areas. For example, you may have great indoor space. You may have great materials at your centers. You may have, a really great math and literacy components, so you'll make up that score in other areas, because remember, we're looking for that overall score. So it's always good for you. That's why we come out when we do the monitoring. We come out and do a dry run if you want, just so you have some feedback to see where you need to go, what your strengths and weaknesses are. And if there's things that are happening that are out of your control, like those playground things, or if let's say that you don't have a window in your classroom, or your window doesn't open and you have absolutely no access to any other ventilation that's out of your control, you can look at other areas where you can improve your score for that overall average. Does that make sense? Okay. Everybody gets so worried when we come out. They're so scared. And you don't have to be. I mean, I would worry about the score too, but I really am rooting for you. So this is just a little slide for the Evaluation and Training Institute that we use. That they come out and do your pre and post assessment. IGB scholarship options. This is Florencia's part. This is for acquiring, you have to acquire high quality designation. So in other words, what Jennifer Thronson is my supervisor, and what she wanted me to make sure that you understand is that if you do not want to apply for the HQSR-E grant, but you want that high quality designation, some people just want it. They just want to be able to say, our program's high quality is deemed by the USBE. Great, we'll come out and do that for you. Or some people don't want the grant, they want the IGP scholarship. You can do that instead. That's why that grant application sample is in your packet. You can apply for the scholarship instead of the grant. Does that make sense? Debbie.
Will the IGP scholarship be continuing?
The question from Debbie was, will the IGP scholarship be continuing? If so, for how long, Florencia?
It lasts the same as the grant. It's both are part of the same legislation.
So next year will be the
Yes, and we won't know until the next legislative session if this will continue or not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right.
Okay, so a part of this legislation also is the Intergenerational Poverty Scholarship Program, and the Department of Workforce Services runs this piece, and I work with the programs. And what it means is every year Utah uses the information from its public assistance programs to identify those families experiencing intergenerational poverty, which means those families remaining in poverty for a long period of time. From that information, the Department of Workforce Services creates a list of families. And from that list of families, for this particular legislation, we pull all the 40-year-old children that will be going or could be going to a preschool program right before kindergarten. So we pull that list, and every year we have different numbers. I can give you some numbers because they're very interesting to know. During the year 2016-2017, the list of IGP 40-year-old children at risk of intergenerational poverty was 4,250 children. This year, for the year 17-18, the numbers are higher, and we have 4,447. And these are the children whose families have been in receiving public assistance, and that's how the Department of Workforce Services measures this. Utah is the only state that differentiates intergenerational poverty with situational poverty, which is different. So these families that are all across the state have the possibility to apply for a scholarship. However, not all these families live near a high-quality school readiness program. That's why we appreciate all you coming in. We want to add on to that list so everybody has access to a high-quality school readiness program. So out of those 4,447 children that could have had the possibility to go to a high-quality program, we were only able to send 3,357 scholarships. So over 1,000 children did not live near a high-quality school readiness program. And so we sent all those applications. And I received back 397 completed applications out of that. So that's a very, very small amount. We are all working in trying to, both USB and DWS, we're trying to work together to outreach those families and see. We know that some of the families are being served and we just don't know. And we know that some of those families might be in your expansion spots and we don't know that. We hope that a lot of these children are still being served and we don't know and they just don't need to use these scholarships. But so out of these 397 scholarships that we issue, as of yesterday, only 143 scholarships are being used. So that's a very small amount. So your outreach programs are very, very, very important. For that, I included a sample of the application, and you can all have a sample, and you can all post it in your offices, and you can see it in the slide, and that's what the families receive. And you cannot just give this application, you cannot give this application out, but you can say, if you have received this application, we can help you fill it up. And I have had many of the school districts actually send those to me directly. Some of these families did not know how to do it, did not know what this was for. So if you have this posted, and also, will you go on to the next slide? This is the voucher they receive. So you can have a sample of this in your office too, and say, did you receive one of this? And it's happened that that's how they use it, because a lot of these families receive a lot of mail from DWS. Yes, Melissa. There is an application in Spanish, and I could send you all both, Spanish and in English. Does anybody have any questions regarding this piece?
Debbie?
Can I give you this?
Yeah.
Yes, Debbie.
So, as I understood it last year, you sent the information to the families that qualify or that would qualify, and then it's their job
Mm-hmm.
to find
Password.
a high-quality
Guess it
preschool somewhere near
done.
them. But as a follow-up, I further understand that you cannot share those names with us so that we can
Thank you.
give them a boost. So it's still that way?
Yeah.
So far, it's still that way. However, we're working to see how we can approach and reach those families.
Do you work with the IRC, the refugee program?
The Department of Workforce Services works with the refugee program, yes. I don't work with them directly.
Okay, because they've just talked with me about besides Head Start.
Okay.
Which obviously the TANF funds would, or the expansion grant would work, but so would this.
Right.
Not for three.
So we cannot share any private information with any of the districts. However, we did do 2 mailings. So the first mailing was before school ended, and then the second mailing was during the summertime to remind them about this. We are trying to find out other ways to work with these families and reach them. It is a very transit population, and sometimes they call me directly, and sometimes they moved, and sometimes they don't have that school around anymore.
Beyond mailing letters, do you do like community outreach, go into communities and do like sessions or anything at all?
We don't do sessions. Somebody is asking me if there is other community events to let families know. We don't have that in place right now.
Okay, and then just for clarification, this application is only available in English and in Spanish?
Yes, it is. In the caseworkers at the Department of Workforce Services, if these customers approach them, they help them submit it, they help them understand what the program is for. I have talked personally with many families, and a lot of these children have many risk factors, and so do the families, and we want to help them. There is a lot of some families just don't have the information, just don't know what it is to go to preschool and what the difference there is with kindergarten. And I was surprised at knowing that, because we give it for granted. So go ahead, there is a question.
Oh, and then, so then, since it's only available in English and Spanish, if a family is interested, they could call in and there would be a translator available?
Yes, the Department of Workforce Services has many translators for, I'm not sure how many languages, but many languages, yes.
I can just clarify online. The question was, what languages is the scholarship application available? It's currently only available in Spanish and English, but families can call DWS and receive help from a translator for filling out the application.
Yes.
Any other questions?
Do you have another question?
No, I
Okay.
was just gonna say, our district has, and I realize that we're small, but our district has I can't remember what it's called, but it's a back to school night that happens before registration, before staff goes back, and it is specifically for our non-English speaking families, and they
Okay.
they provide dinner and some childcare, and then they have help to fill out all of the different paperwork.
Okay, so someone from the session, if you're listening in, suggested having a family night where their district does one where a dinner is provided and there's translation services available from the district. That would be a great way to meet your family engagement piece too, is to offer something like that.
So family engagement and outreach programs are key to getting these families in your programs. And if anybody has any good ideas on how you have done this in the past, we welcome them, and we would like you to share them with other districts. Go ahead.
So we've had a lot of people come in and are interested in the information, but they don't qualify because they're not intergenerational.
That's right.
They're poverty,
Mhm.
but not the intergenerational piece. So just giving the information out might give some mixed information to people. I just caution you with that.
Okay, so what was said is that just giving the information might confuse people because not everybody can apply. These are pre-selected families. And so just be cautious when you give out information, and make sure you say that if you received an application from the Department of Workforce Services, you might be eligible to apply. And you can always have them contact their caseworkers. You can ask, do you have a caseworker? Do you have a case number? So, because you can't just complete these applications for everybody. Thank you for that. It is true. So, yes,
When you send out the notice to people,
yes.
you include a list of all the high quality sites.
Yes.
Make them know.
So when we sent the first mailing, I sent everybody that was high quality last year. I included everybody. Then the second mailing most likely has the updated ones with more schools. We want more schools in that list. So they know, and it is highly encouraged that if those families call me, I have them approach the school, because that way we can follow up and see if they actually enroll and show up the first day.
So I just wondered, like, if you're doing a mailing and it's like down in Washington County, is there any way to just include those schools so it doesn't confuse them with that whole
The-
list of schools? Or
So Melissa is telling me if we can only send the schools where they are located. The problem with that is that these families are very transit. And I just had a call yesterday, and this family was living in Salt Lake, and now they are in Grand County, and I couldn't send them to any schools yet. However, I'm hopeful that we can include all the rural areas in the IGP counties, so we can send it to all these children. So the intergenerational poverty scholarship program, as I said, is run by the Department of Workforce Services, and I am your contact, and I will be happy to help you with anything. I cannot share any personal information right now. I can't share any information of these families, but I can help you with any needs your program might have. So when these families approach you, you will enroll them not in your expansion slots. So you're going to enroll them in your regular spots. And as Tammy was saying, you have the option to just accept scholarships if your program cannot expand. So we've been doing that with the private providers. The private providers, a lot of them cannot expand. However, they can accept those scholarships in their regular spots, and they get reimbursed for that spot. And we have a lot of success with that, because we have a lot of small private providers and others that just didn't have room to expand. When those children enroll, and you are, say a child enrolls in your district, if that child attends one day, that your district gets paid for that child. If the child moves to a different district, we're going to have to wait for the next month. So make sure you know how you're going to handle those expenses. Also, I will be sending each of you an invoice template that you'll have to use. It's very, very simple. So the first thing you have is your cost per child per month, as Tammy was telling you. And that's all I need. I need the cost per child per month to initiate a contract. Your program will then sign a memorandum of agreement in which states that for each child will pay you so much. It is highly encouraged that you look at your expenses and see how much it actually costs for each child to have to be in your program. That's what's going to be in your invoice. The invoice is very simple, and you basically put how many children in each of your locations, and then you add that cost per child per month. And so the invoice template has 2 tabs, and the second tab is your supporting documentation. The supporting documentation is the voucher number, the name of the child, and the parent's name, so I can match it. Because sometimes there's typos and there is mistakes in that you wrote the wrong voucher number or the wrong child. We just need to match all of that. So, and this invoice is sent also through your USB secure site. And the person in charge of this is Kristen Campbell. So you can it is highly encouraged that you invoice regularly and not wait till the end of the year to invoice us. I would expect at least 4 invoices during the year. I want to know where those children are, because if we can do more to reach those families, that would be great. There is an initial report, and it was just due this past October, where each of your program tells us how many children with scholarships are enrolled in your program, and there's other information that Tammy requires. Basically that's because most programs have not invoiced us yet. So we want to know how many kids are enrolled and are attending programs. So I was talking about the invoice. You can always tell me I'm ready to invoice, and I can remind you how to process that invoice. So what you do is you send an email to Kristen Campbell, and you say, Kristen, I'm ready to invoice DWS for the month of October, November, and the enrollment fees. So she will give you a password to a secure site, and that's where you upload it. If you make a mistake and send it to me, it's still secure. It's a government email too. It's secure, so don't panic. But we have to use your USB. Move it. Is that the name of it? So Kristen always tells me when the invoice is ready. If you haven't heard from me, please check. Things happen. The website sometimes doesn't work. Packages get messed up. So when you are completing the invoice, even though it's very simple, make sure you complete every line of it. There is a DWS number, which means what's your contract number. There's a date. There is a range. There is signatures. If any of that is missing, it can be processed. So make sure you include all your supporting documentation. I'm going to look through my list and make sure I'm not forgetting anything. I think I went through everything. Does anybody have further questions? Is there any questions online? I don't think so.
I have a question though.
Go ahead.
Could you, some people have talked about ways to include it in enrollment, which I know we can't give them the application, but could you include like maybe at the top half and put a sample of the voucher and the application and just write sample on it and say something like, if you receive this in the mail, we accept these?
You can. Like you could just be very careful and explain that you can't just grab this application and
you'd have to have it at home, right? It would have to have been mailed to you.
So you have to make sure that you say, if you receive these, please let us know. And a good thing is to say, we can help you complete it, and you can always email it to me. You don't even need to fax it. You can email me a copy of it.
So that might be a good idea to include what the scholarship application and the voucher looks like in the enrollment packet, so that people go, oh, I think I do have that. And to even ask them, could you ask them when they come in?
Yes, you can ask them.
Completed paperwork, and to have it, like Florence has said, posted in your office so people can see it and might recognize it. That might help.
Have you spoken with Head Start so that when they have their application intakes, they are asking these kinds of questions?
Several Head Starts are deemed high quality, and we work with them. Yes.
Okay, but so they could have voucher kids in Head Start?
If the Head Start has been deemed high quality, yes.
Really?
But I have some Head Start programs, and this information is public. It's at, if you want to know what schools are high quality, you can go to careaboutchildcare.utah.gov, and there's a list of them. Yes.
Okay.
Is there any other questions regarding the scholarship program?
If I wanted to do that, could I just email you to get that those sample papers?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I do have one more question.
Okay.
I am guessing that this is the same as with the expansion grant, that if you have a child with special needs who's also IGP, that they could receive funding from both if they're not exclusive.
So if the child was
You
not,
have a kid with Down syndrome who's third generational poverty and has received one of these.
so we encourage families to keep using their special needs. help and not use this application.
So
Because we
special-
don't want them to quit doing what they've been doing to move on to a different program that might not be working with the special needs. So the application says, actually, if you are receiving special needs, you won't be eligible for it. But we had cases that the diagnose came after and then they can use it.
So, and I did clarify, so that's with the IGP scholarship with, our legal, Natay, and that, so they have, if they have special ed, they're already getting access to
Right.
school. So then the IGP scholarship would work, but for HQSRE, they can.
Right.
So-
Yes.
So the question was if you could use IGP scholarship for special ed students, and the answer is yes,
Yes.
if they're on the high quality.
If they're on the
expansion grant.
list, yes.
Yes.
We just don't want to discourage the families to keep receiving the services they're getting, and that's why we said if your child is already receiving services from Head Start or special education, you don't need to apply. We want them to stay in their program. They could change programs. They could change programs.
What if the same program has
Well,
all the
they can use this. They can use the voucher then. Yeah.
Yeah, what are
So
you-
if they're already receiving a special education and they're staying in the same program that's deemed high quality, it's a tricky question. We came across this last year, Melissa. So what did the legal department say about that?
For HQSR funding, but not IGP. Because they're already getting funding for preschool. Yeah, and I thought it would be.
Yes,
Because
it's
it's not that they're denied preschool, I mean, they still have access to preschool because they're getting out special ed funding, but for the IGP scholarship, it's different. Yeah,
Mm,
but the way, well.
it's
the
different.
IGP is just a little
Yeah,
different.
it's just a little different.
That's what I understand.
However, if the child is diagnosed after and is using the voucher, we can pay for those special education services.
They can get HQSRE funding because usually they qualify for
Yeah.
both. So.
So you can qualify for IGP and special ed under HQSRE, but not HQSR?
And it gets more confusing. Okay, for special ed.
For special ed,
For students, okay, you have a student that qualified for HQSRE funding, and if they then are eligible for special ed services, they can still keep getting the HQSRE funding. If you have a special ed student that qualifies for HQSRE funding, they can receive it. Only if it's above your expansion, if it's an expansion student. So you always have to consider expansion. You have your
Gotcha.
baseline of attendance, anything above expansion, above that is considered expansion. And if you have some sped students that fall into that, yes, HQSRE funding works for them.
okay, so if I'm HQSRE and I receive a new special education student to my program, that student then qualifies for IGP.
If it's above expansion, if it's above your baseline enrollment, and
Yes.
you have a spot open for them, you gotta provide them services regardless.
Yes.
But if
Okay,
by chance, this is expanding your program.
then
to-
they would be eligible.
IGP is different. You take that student.
Yeah. They just show up at my door and they're like, hey, we just moved to your district, we're on an IEP, so then I can go. And I also have an IGP scholarship.
They shouldn't be receiving an IGP scholarship.
Well, they shouldn't, if they mark they're already receiving special education services, they shouldn't be receiving a scholarship because they're already receiving services. So you wouldn't be getting those kids in the first place.
It's all about expansion. HQSRE is all about expansion.
Mhm.
Yeah.
IGP is any student that comes to your program.
Right.
And we can work on specific cases because every case is different.
So for people online, if you have questions about special ed and IGP as it applies to HQSRE and HQSR, I would just encourage you to call or email one of us, probably not me, probably Florencia, to get clarification
We'll
on
find out.
how this works. Because I
Sometimes
can't
there
even
is,
try to explain it.
it relates to your program, and it's something that we need to look into and to see how we can help you. we want all these kids in preschool,
Yeah.
right? So we'll do our best.
Yeah. Angela, did you have a question?
I guess I just want to do like a little bit of a clarification.
Okay.
So if you get the expansion grant and your kid was fed, if your family, the student was fed, then you can come in and be part of the high quality preschool program. But you're already pre-identified or already have been diagnosed with a special disability, so then you're not eligible for IGP. But what if you become identified with special needs while you're on IGP?
With a scholarship?
Yes.
So-
do you lose that scholarship?
Nope.
While you, okay.
No, so if a child is identified with a disability after you enroll them and they have a voucher, we'll support that.
Okay. So the
So they'll get double funding.
Well, we can, so the scholarship program can pick up that cost, that extra cost that will come from the special education department. So you have to figure that. What is it? How much is that? I know in the past some programs did not invoice us for that piece because it was very hard to figure out. But if you have a way to figure out how much that costs, you can include it. You can say, this is how much it is for to add the special education services to this spot. So I know it's a very hard thing to do, but some of you might be able to come up with an idea and we can all share it.
Okay. So the clarification on that was, if you are already on a scholarship and you're in a high quality program, and you in the process of that year become eligible for special ed, then your IGP scholarship can still be applied.
Yes. Yes.
True.
Well, you wouldn't need to figure out who's eligible because we already did that. If the child shows up with an application, they're eligible. So you don't need to figure out that piece. You just invoice us for that spot. I think there is a misunderstanding on
What if what?
what's that?
From special ed, you mean?
Right. Yes, I understand that. It would be the different amount if that child qualifies for special services. Yes. And sometimes your districts can pick up that part. Sometimes they can. The smaller districts have had to figure out all those costs. But if that child shows up with a voucher, they're already qualified. There's nothing else you have to do but invoice us monthly, as if we were All right. Is there any other questions? Sorry, this is confusing sometimes. It's a learning process, and we've all been learning.
Melissa, you can be a good resource for this too, correct?
Special education.
Okay, good. Yeah.
I'm going to check back with the tape, but
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So we're going to get clarification on that.
We are yes.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions about IGP scholarships? Okay.
I'm going to add something. The scholarships, if you get them, we encourage you to use them because we're tracking these children. And if you want to just not use it, and if you can keep track of how many families are in your program that have a voucher, even if you're not invoicing us for it. So it will be great information, because maybe all these 400 children that did receive a voucher are in your programs, and we hope so. Well, thank you, everybody. We hope to have everybody in our high quality school readiness list this year. And if you need any more information, please email me.
Okay, so we're in the home stretch here. We're almost done. We just had we just left some questions out here. Does HQSR-E funding only cover new low-income children, or can I use the funding for children in my existing program? It only covers new low-income children. Can I charge a fee for preschool on a sliding scale based on parental income for children who are not from low-income families? Yes, you can. Can I apply for both HQSR and HQSR-E? No. Does my preschool program have to be inclusive? That means students with a range of abilities and some who are receiving special education services. I said no, but that's actually yes, sorry. I made a mistake there. Can LEAs apply for funding to have preschool teachers get their CDA or associate's degree in an early childhood-related field? You need to apply for the DWS grant scholarship. Do you want to talk about that?
I don't have all that information, but if you're familiar with the Care About Child Cares in your areas, they can help you find all the classes your teachers need and seeing if there is room in the cohorts to get their CDAs. I will encourage you to reach each of those offices.
There's also the TEACH program from UAEYC, which is providing support from your employer as well as from the community college to get your associates.
Okay, so someone said there's also support from UAEYC supporting that. And then there's also, Liz, do you remember there was a mention of that in that meeting we were in the other day for the Transition Summit? Someone mentioned a scholarship. They were telling Leanne because she was, do you know what I'm talking about?
Okay, so Joellen yesterday that's over this whole program.
Yes.
So they have money to start some new cohorts.
Okay.
So if you're interested in starting up a cohort, you contact Joellen Robbins at DWS.
Okay, so there is funding to start a new cohort through DWS, and you would contact Joellen Robbins. She's from the Office of Child Care, right? Okay. All right.
She didn't say. So,
Okay.
I think there's several spots, so. So if you need more information on the CDA program, you can contact me and I can get you in touch with Joellen. Or if you have her email, you're welcome to email her directly.
Okay. I have to say, on the DWS website, it's really hard to find contact information.
You
Has anybody tried that?
Contact
It's
me.
impossible to find people on there.
It's very secure.
Yes, well, yeah.
So all of you guys are renewals. Oh,
Except for Tara.
yeah, that's right. Okay, so this information, for you guys that are renewing, you don't have to do that whole application thing again. You'll have that program monitoring checklist. Remember doing this? You guys probably aren't familiar with this. So they'll come in February, Tammy will send out the link to this. And they'll go through just all those elements that were in the grant. You know, did you do your code of conduct, your non-disclosure? How did funding go this year? Did you meet your ECHR score? All those things. So you'll go through all that with her and see if everything's good, then you continue. If there's something you need to write an action plan on, then we'll set that up. And then so you'll have this completed. You need to submit a budget, and then there's just the cover page of the application for how much money you're requesting. I don't know do you remember doing that last year?
I do, yeah, I do remember.
So that's well, when you do this program monitoring piece, we'll ask for like professional development and calendar of your activities. Those things outside of the ECHRs. Family engagement pieces, you know, what did you do this year for that? And it seemed like there was a third one. Ongoing assessment, that was the third one. Did you hit your beginning and your mid-year? Because we're in January, just to see that you hit those points.
Okay, so for renewing HQSR-E applicants, you do not need to reapply. You just need to do the monitoring.
We'll do the monitoring checklist with it.
The monitoring checklist.
Have interviews like next week for the new person for HQSR-E. So
Yes.
they'll probably be out to do the monitoring checklist with you. You submit a budget.
Submit a budget
And a new cover page.
and a new cover page.
Just the cover page. So I'll send those out to everyone.
What? Oh, it's because it dropped down here.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. That's
Okay.
the new HQSR-E person. Tammy's just filling in right now, temporarily.
Fingers crossed. Okay, so you don't need to submit, sorry, my microphone fell down, but you don't need to submit a new application if you're renewing. We're just going to be doing that monitoring and the ECHRs for you. Good to know. But you do have to do the letter of intent, yes. Okay. All right, last couple things. There's a 15% gap between reduced poverty level and TANF at can you use the funding for children whose parental income is within that 15% gap? Yes. Can an LEA student apply for intergenerational poverty scholarships? Yes, we know that. Can I use the funding for 4-year-old students who were in the program last year, 3-year-olds? Yes. Can LEAs apply for no, that's the same. Yeah, it is. Okay, So there's your critical dates. Those are also in your slides. December 15th is the letter of intent. January, we do new site visits. January, February, site visits to LEAs already receiving grant money. February 16th is when the grant application is due. March is when we do USBE, the board approvals. March, April, we notify you of acceptance, and then you start your renewal or the program on July 1st. So our goal is always to expand access to high-quality school readiness programs for economically disadvantaged children, to increase school readiness, improve academic performance, and reduce remediation costs associated with poor academic outcomes. And below that, I don't have a slide on here, but I included a slide for you with contact information for Florencia and for me as well. So please, please, if you have any questions, don't feel like you're bugging us. That's what we're here for. I've had people email me 10 times a day, and it's okay. Don't feel like you're bugging us. It's our job.
So I just wanted to clarify, the baseline is year one, or what you put in for when you first apply.
For attendance.
Yes, that's your
It
baseline.
stays the same.
Okay,
Your
all right.
Okay.
baseline always, because that's what your district has shown that you've supported in the past.
Okay.
That law stays the same.
That's a good question, too. So your baseline for your attendance is whatever you had that first year that you were on HQSR-E. For anybody else, it would be, the baseline would be what your total attendance was the year prior. Questions, anybody? Hey, we got you out of here an hour and a half early. How about that? So thank you so much, everybody, for coming. If you have any questions or you want to talk to us or you want to look at the Eckers book, please come on up and let us know. Otherwise, you are free to go and have a fabulous weekend. Thank you.